Hello everyone, welcome to my lecture recital. Today I'm gonna play 6 Chopin's etudes and talk about each of them. Chopin was a Polish composer, pianist, and teacher. He was born in Zelsova Wola, a hamlet near Warsaw. His family moved to Warsaw when Chopin was 7 years old. Chopin stayed in his homeland for about 20 years. Chopin then moved to Vienna, where he stayed for 8 months before eventually settling in Paris in 1831. Chopin was a prodigy taught by both his mother and his sister. When he was very young, he published his first composition at the age of 7. He was called a Polish Mozart and appeared in the salons of aristocracy. Chopin primarily wrote for solo piano, including a wide range of genres and forms, such as ballades, mazurkas, waltzes, nocturnes, barcaroles, polonaises, preludes, sonatas, and etudes. He also wrote 2 piano concertos, a few chamber pieces, and some vocal music. Chopin primarily wrote for Chopin's etudes occupy a unique place in piano literature. Aside from being virtuosic, his etudes are more than technical studies because these etudes exemplify artistry and romantic aesthetics. Chopin's etudes equally served both the artistic as well as the physical-technical development of the artist when compared to the early 19th century etudes, such as those by Czerny. Czerny's etudes are technical but seldom involve musical elements. What Chopin inherited from his predecessors, he developed into something brand new. The English word etude comes from a French term étude, which means study, and is originally derived from the Latin word studium. Etude can be called study or exercise. Oxford Music Online defines etude as the French equivalent of study, widely adopted for fairly short pieces whose principal aim is the development or exploitation of a particular aspect of performing technique. Musicians often take the term etude even further. For instance, Schumann encouraged people to consider technical exercises as a daily physical exercise, which is necessary to keep you in health. Schumann explains that daily finger practice will enhance pianists' playing in many technical aspects and constantly help them to improve as a well-rounded pianist. In an article for American music teacher, musicologist Edith Wagner organizes etude into 2 categories. First is the mechanical exercise, and second is characteristic. Wagner briefly explained the development of the piano etude. The earliest etude originated from Germany in the 16th century, and at that time, the form was just a short and repeated finger exercise. By the end of the 17th century, the Italian toccata played the same role as the etude. In the late 18th century and the early 19th century, etudes became more difficult and aimed for the perfect technical training. Clementi, Kramer, Czerny, and other keyboard composers were the earliest fingers to design the collection of etudes as a course of study during this time. From the mid to late 19th century, etudes still served for mastering technical skills. However, during the Romantic period, composers such as Chopin and Liszt added dramatic and lyrical elements to the etudes. These pieces are characteristic of the Romantic style. Chopin's etudes occupy a significant position in the repertoire of piano music. His etudes represent a transition from the pianoforte studies in early 19th century to the concert etudes that involved both virtuosity and artistry. He wrote music that seems to demand that players develop their piano technique beyond what the Etude literature already provided. Chopin published two collections of 12 etudes, Op.10 in 1833 and Op.25 in 1837, and 3 etudes without opus numbers. Many of them followed ABA structure, a main theme with a contrasting middle section. Chopin's etudes cover most of the standard technical problems, such as arpeggios and broken chords, repeated notes, double thirds, sixths, octaves, scales, and skips and extensions. His etudes also deal with mechanical difficulties, such as the fast run on left hand and the need for strengthening the weakest finger. Also difficult in his etude is achieving musical balance while there are different voices between hands, big jumps and large range, and both lyrical and thematic passages. These techniques demand finger flexibility, which is difficult to achieve, but when done correctly can reduce tension in the body, shoulder, and arm. Therefore, Chopin's etudes require more virtuosity, playing, and deeper musical understanding than those of his predecessors. French pianist, conductor, and teacher Alfred Cortot published a student's edition, Chopin 12 Studies, Op.10 and Op.25, which is very helpful for practicing and understanding Chopin's etudes and overcoming the technical difficulties. Cortot gives a detailed explanation of the technical difficulties of Op.10 and Op.25, and he provides some preparatory exercise for each of the etudes to practice the specific difficulties. The first etude I'm going to play is Op.10 No.1. first etude is often regarded as one of the most difficult etudes of his 24 etudes. This etude focuses on a rapid chord progression. The right hand plays the rapid arpeggios over left hand bass line. In an elaborate version of a simple chorale, people with bigger hands may have a physical advantage in playing this etude. According to Coteau, the first difficulty to overcome is to stretch and firmness in shifting the hand over nearly the whole length of the keyboard to obtain a correct position of the hand. The second difficulty to overcome is the evenness of tone value and individual strength of each finger, which is important to achieve fluency, firmness, and perfect legato. Where Coteau identified some of these issues a pianist might face, I have determined that there are three major difficulties in this etude. First, it is physically exhausting for the performer since the right hand plays fast arpeggios, and it may make their forearm sore. At the beginning of this piece, there are some accent marks on the score, and that seem to suggest that Chopin wants the performer to maintain a sense of rhythm in groups of 4 notes. Or it may prompt the performer to relax every 4 notes. One needs to be aware of the phrasing of the right hand. I suggest that performer treats the 4 notes as a group, then rotates the wrist to take a breath. This allows the right hand time to relax, helping to save energy. Second, the dynamic is hard to maintain. There is no piano mark in this piece, which means performers are supposed to play louder throughout this piece. However, the right hand plays single notes rather than chords, so it's hard to play arpeggios with bigger sound. Bigger sound can be made by taking advantage of the weight of the arm and body rather than using the fingers. And the third difficulty is that it's hard to play fast with accuracy. Use the right hand like a ruler with a specific frame to measure the next group of arpeggios. Be flexible to kick or change the specific hand shape to be able to find the next frame. When the first hand plays the ascending arpeggios, the second finger plays a significant role in setting up a certain frame. When the right hand plays the descending arpeggios, the fifth finger plays the same role. The interval on right hand changes frequently, so it is challenging to find the next group of the notes accurately. Therefore, one must be flexible to change the hand shape and rotate the wrist. For example, place the ascending arpeggio of the right hand is like the forehand when we hold a tennis racket. While we play the descending arpeggios of the right hand is like the backhand. To hit the ball back, one should be flexible to shift the position between forehand and backhand. When we play this etude, it is the same concept here to change the hand shape quickly. Usually, the most difficult part in this Chopin's etude is not the melodic part, but the accompaniment. In this etude, it is important to be aware of the harmonic progression on left hand and changing of color when Chopin applies a single technique throughout the whole piece. The musicality might be limited, so he occasionally comes up with some unexpected ideas, such as enriching the harmony by right hand to avoid monotony and lack of musicality. In measure 30 and 32 are quite difficult because 3 of the 4 notes are on the black keys, which are smaller and hard to play. And the fingers should be as flat as possible, and the wrists do not need to be raised too high. So I will demonstrate from measure 29 to measure 32. Then we have 3 black notes comes. Black notes again. So generally we don't need to raise the wrist too high and keep the flat of the fingers. And we can freeze the music and take time in some proper places, which will help the forearm and wrist to breathe naturally and aesthetically. In this etude, the eyes should mainly focus on the right hand. However, the left hand has some occasionally leaps. For example, from measure 42 to measure 45. The pedal can be used to make the octaves sound coherent, but the actual fingering changed from 1, 5, 1 to finger 2 to hold the key in the octave. And then we go back to use the original fingering to find the next octave with accuracy. So we don't need to focus on left hand and just focusing on the right beat arpeggios on a right hand. This strategy for playing the left hand can be applied to all of his etudes, such as from the beginning. Focus on the left hand in this etude. And the second etude I'm gonna play is Op.10 No.2. The nickname is chromatic. me get some water. This etude is another one of Chopin's most difficult etudes. According to Cousteau, the performer should concentrate on the independence of uneven playing of the weaker fingers, third, fourth, and fifth, in order to play the legato. This etude must be played with the correct position of the hand and requires lightness and dexterity. The difficulty here is to overcoming a crossing of third, fourth, and fifth fingers. This requires the division of the muscular action of the hand into two elements, the thumb and index playing the accompanying part, and another three fingers playing the melody. While Op.10 No.1 is much easier for performer has a big hand, Op.10 No.2 is difficult to play no matter you have big or small hands. There are two main reasons for this. The first reason is that the fingers must be raised to play this etude. During the performance, the fingers are not necessarily to raise. When the performer raises the fingers, especially the third, fourth, and fifth, the tendon attached to the forearm will cause a muscle tension. If you try to lift third, fourth, and fifth fingers higher, after a few seconds, you will feel stressed even you haven't to play. Many piano teachers have emphasized that we don't need to raise our fingers when we play the piano. So try not to lift the fingers here as high as possible, and it's better to maintain a flat hand shape because this is the most efficient way to play. It's important to raise the fingers here because when playing the chromatic scales, we have to play from the white keys to black keys. But the black keys are higher than the white keys. When the first finger is already on the white keys, the next finger has to lift it up to reach the black key, thus creating an uncomfortable position. Another element of this piece that may make the hand feel tired or cause the tension of the forearm is the specific hand shape and angle must be achieved to play this piece. When hands deviate to the outside, the muscles for the forearm will be tense. Therefore, the uncomfortable hand shape and the lifting of the fingers will make the forearm tense. And it's even more difficult. Fortunately, in each group of four notes, the first chord is a 16th note rather than a fourth note. Thus, performer can release the tension immediately. It is 16th notes rather than at this point, being flexible to rotate the wrist is crucial. If the other three notes can be played in a comfortable position, then performer will be able to relax their forearms and wrist as much as possible. I mentioned the forehand and backhand of the piano when I talked about last piece, and the same applies here. The backhand is more awkward than the forehand, so it's better to consciously use the wrist for help. When we play the ascending scales, the angle of the wrist should be a little closer to our body, and when we play the descending scales, the angle of the wrist should be closer to the outside of the body. Therefore, when we are about to play the turning point of the ascending and descending scales, the angle of the wrist should be changed quickly and adjusted in time. From the beginning of the piece to measure 16, The ascending and descending changes of the chromatic scales are mostly regular. The difficulty starts at the measure 17. Here, it requires a large swing of the wrist so that our little finger can reach the key. And we should rotate our wrist in such a places. And measure 44 is exactly same as measure 13. And there are not many 4-time markings in the entire etude, but starting from bar 32. Three decrescendos are written. Usually a place where it's written 3 decrescendos should be the climax of a piece. Proportionally, this place is also on the golden ratio point, and many composers like to set up the climax here. Up to the 32nd bar of this etude, I rotate the wrist every 4 notes to achieve the purpose of relaxation. Here, at the climax of this etude, I don't need to save my energy, so I change to rotate my wrist once every 2 notes. Which makes the sound significantly stronger. Unlike Liszt and Rachmaninoff's etude that include various techniques in each of them, Chopin utilizes one single technique throughout the entire piece. Therefore, he likes to introduce something interesting or surprising to avoid monotony. In measure 15 and measure 42, Chopin uses Neapolitan 6th chord. Then the harmony progression goes from A minor to B flat major. That surprises people and brings out a feeling of being abroad suddenly. For example, in Appassionata Sonata, Beethoven uses Neapolitan 6th chord in the opening. Then the second try. So be aware of the changing of the color and mode. The next etude I'm gonna play is Op.10 No.5. The nickname is Black Key. student should concentrate on ease, clarity, and fluent action on the black keys. One difficulty the performer may face is achieving suppleness when shifting the hand in order to facilitate the action of the fingers in disjunct position. Another difficulty is the even quality of tone wherever weaker or stronger fingers play in succession. Chopin's black key etude is a contributory etude in the piano literature. Bach's piano music helped people to get used to playing with their thumbs. However, before Chopin, there are not many composers intending to create music to allow performers to use their thumbs frequently on the black keys. Chopin demonstrated that thumb can be used as flexible as other fingers to play the black keys. And there is no need to be afraid to use the thumb to play the black keys. According to Corto's student edition, it is best to present a pearl-like sound, which reminds me of a poem by a Chinese poet Bai Juyi to describe a sound of a Chinese instrument, pipa, like pearls large and small cascading on a plate of jade. For the right hand, the performer must take the advantage of the gravity to emphasize the forte. And however, the performer must keep the forearm and the wrist loose and keep the fingers flat to move faster and deliver a delicate sound with light touching of the keys. Although it's hard for the right hand to stay on the black keys most of the time, the technical difficulty on left hand cannot be ignored. So I suggest to practice left hand alone. Chopin likes to present a singing tone by left hand in many of his etudes. Sometimes the melodic line is in the middle voice on left hand, and it's hard to play, while the right hand here plays the rapid triplets. The etude requires plenty of musicality. There are many contrasts in the first page, such as forte and piano. And staccato and legato. Staccato here. And legato. So measure 1 is forte, measure 2 is piano, and left hand played an important role in controlling the volume because really only on the right hand to play the dynamic contrast, the sound will be weaker and the right hand will lose the relax and flexibility. Also measure 1 to measure 3 is staccato, while measure 4 changes to legato, exemplified by left hand as well. Starting from measure 31, Chopin uses harmonic rhythm, that the rate at which the chords change, to create a tension in this passage. It sounds like the music is going faster and faster, but the actual tempo doesn't go faster at all. After that, the right hand comes with the rapid arpeggios. It's not technically difficult here, but it's important to pay attention to the rhythmic part. What makes it difficult is that Chopin writes a triplet against the group of 4 notes. When practicing the right hand, rotate the wrist every 4 notes. But when we add the left hand had to arrive on time. Another element to notice is the fingering in the cadenza measures 65. It suggests fingering is 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rather than that, I suggest to use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2. So changing the fingering only twice instead of three times, so it allows a more secure finger position on the black keys. The next etude I'm gonna play is Op.10 No.1, Revolutionary. embodies Chopin's nationalism. Although Chopin earned a lot of fame and recognition in Paris, he never forgot his home country of Poland. Since Poland was dismembered and occupied by Russia and Prussia, marked by repeated failures and armed insurrections, Chopin became an exile. When Chopin composed this etude, Poland was experiencing the November Revolution, where Russia was trying to occupy Poland. Although Russia had already invaded Poland many times, this particular invasion caused the resistance of the Polish people. including Chopin himself, because of the bloody and the violent action, and it affected Poland's politics and economy. Chopin gave some concerts in Vienna at that time, but it didn't help much financially. Therefore, mostly Chopin was supported by his family. Chopin mentioned in his diary when he was worried that his family could not even afford the bread. Chopin was a famous exile. He had to face the threats and harassment from Russian agents and secret services. Well, we may never know exactly what he was feeling at that time. This piece very clearly conveys a deep anger and sadness. This etude is in C minor. There are several famous pieces in C minor that expresses darkness and tragedy that can be discussed together, such as Beethoven's Pathetic Sonata and Mozart's Sonata Key 457, which was written around the time of his mother's death. Op.10 No.12 is an exercise for the training of scales, arpeggios, and other special patterns in the left hand. The right hand carries the melody by big blocked chords and octaves, as the description of the title implies. This piece is very exciting and expressive. The opening is very powerful, and is then followed by a contrasting main theme which starts from measure 10. The music of the middle section is gentler and more lyrical, and the accompaniment in the left hand changes to a particular arpeggiated pattern starting from the measure 27. The music climax just before the return of the main theme. At last, the music calms down. However, this piece ends surprisingly with a loud outburst, as shown from measure 81. This etude is more powerful and is intended to express an altered voice. In addition, the faster tempo and the scales and arpeggios in left hand increases the difficulty. Chopin combined a wide range of expression and sought to give player more to work on than just finger exercise when compared with other composers in the early 19th century. The next etude is Op.25 No.1. The nickname is Aeolian Harp. Uilleann harp is a musical instrument played by the wind. So no one actually plays this instrument. The performer should emphasize the truly vocal character of the melodic line, as well as the importance of rendering it perfectly legato and delicate, even and deep tone instead of the exclusive use of one finger only and of certain particular wide stretch. So the main melody is like the main melody on top. Technically, this etude is much easier compared with the previous etudes I have played, but this one with lyrical and beautiful semitone. So, phrasing the music passage properly to show the nuance is one difficulty. The main melody line is mostly inside the top notes of the right hand. Interestingly, in few places, Chopin read some secondary melodic lines which were hidden in the inner voice of the right hand, such as measure 15 to 16. So the melody is and then the top notes on the left hand, such as measure 17 to 20, sounds like a response to the right hand's melody. So this is the melody on the left hand. The next passage is so the technical difficulty is to play the stretch the top notes with relaxed and rounded wrist. Notes without the wrist rotate. To achieve accuracy in those places where both hands have big jumps, take time to check the hand position. The last etude I'm going to play is Op.25 No.1. And the nickname is Butterfly. study demands a refined, humorous, somewhat carefree performance. So it's more appropriate to consider this composition as a study of the perfecting of touch applied to octave playing rather than a study for octave playing proper. Many romantic composers like to create music that's related to butterfly. Schumann has a suite of piano pieces named pavillons, French for butterflies. Grieg has a lyrical piece named Butterfly as well. Also, the nickname of this etude is Butterfly. The reason why Butterfly is so attractive to these romantic composers is the growth and development process of the butterfly is from the chrysalis to a beautiful butterfly, which is consistent with the philosophy of the Romantic period. Romanticism advocates innovations and transformation, and the process of being a beautiful butterfly is consistent with the doctrine in Romantic era. This is a special octave etude because the octave needs to be played very light. However, in many pieces such as Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto 3 and Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1, the octaves are played powerfully with an imposing manner. One important element to note is that the arm and wrist must remain loose in order to play light. Also, performers should pay attention to the changing of modes, such as in measure 9 to 16. It's a line from crescendo, then to decrescendo, then to crescendo, and to decrescendo. There is also dynamic contrast, such as in measure 25, where the left hand plays the octaves. So although it is the same melody as the beginning, but we have to emphasize for time. So the melody line repeated several times, but mode and dynamics can be varied. Chopin was so humble that he worried that he didn't compose beautiful exercise for the beginners because his etudes required the virtuosity playing. However, when the pianist achieved the virtuosity, he could get rid of the boring exercises and playing something interesting. Chopin added many artistic elements to his etudes that differed greatly from the more mechanical methods of his predecessors. When comparing his etudes to the early 19th century etudes, Chopin's etudes synthesizes both artistry and technique, while catering to the demands of virtuosity. Furthermore, he turned the etudes into pieces that are characteristic of his deep emotion, complex thoughts, and intense personal experience. And thank you for coming today. I hope you all enjoyed my lecture.